Hi, I'm Batya Shemesh. This is my second video called God Meets the World. I want to talk about today about why we called the video God Meets the World. Well, the first thing is I'm announcing my second book, which is called God Meets the World. The first book is Who is God? It's an introduction to God Meets the World. Because before we start telling people that God meets the world, we have to first talk about who God is. Originally, when I started writing about 6-7 years ago, Hashem told me that he wants the book to be called God Meets the World. And I was shocked because the name God Meets the World sounds very strange. Because how could God meet the world? God created the world. But he told me that he is not, he's meeting the world every day. He's meeting us. When we say world, we don't mean earth. We mean the world that we live in, the way we're building our world, which our world is changing. And he's watching us and he's enjoying seeing the good people in the world, how we're building this world and how it's changing. He's not totally taking over. He's not a monarch. He's not totally taking over. He's giving us a lot of free will and free choice. And he's enjoying what he's seeing. But what surprised me the most about this name was when I started writing, I decided to use the NIV translation of the Bible. And when I read the NIV translation of the Bible about the giving of the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, I realized that that's where Hashem met the world. This is Exodus 19, verse 16. On the morning of the third day there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord descended it on fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. So on this day, this is the day that God comes out and the Jewish people come out to meet God. What's the difference between this revelation and a regular prophet? Prophets, we don't say about a prophet that we're meeting God. We say we're getting prophecy. Really, when a prophet prophesizes, they hear a voice inside their head. One of the questions we ask someone if they say they're hearing voices is the voice, if they're hearing it with their ears. If someone's hearing a voice with their ears, usually it's a sign that they're psychotic. The voices, when you have a voice that's a psychic voice, it's coming in your head. God is interfering with your mind, which means that it can only be God. It can't be, all kinds of dead people or things like that. Not really. I mean, they would have to have permission from God. And what they do is they would have to actually ask God to send the message or to send the videotape. Sending a videotape. So if I saw my father in a dream, it's because God sent over the videotape. My father doesn't have superpowers to speak to me inside my mind. If maybe a ghost would be different, because a ghost is like they're having a punishment and they have to come back to this world and see what's going on. And we have to pray for them that they should go back. If we pray for them, it could really help that they can go away, because those are souls that are not happy. What happened on Mount Sinai is different. The Jewish people, the Israelites, I can't say the Jewish people because Jewish, the word Jewish comes from a later time when the people of Israel were separated into two nations, the nation of Judah and the nation of Israel. But at this time they're called Israelites, and the Israelites heard God speaking. But it wasn't psychotic, it was real. He was speaking, and everybody heard him. Millions of people heard him. How do we know it's millions? Because it says in the Bible that it was 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60. And then you have the women, and then you have the children, and you have the older people. Even if it only had 2 or 3 children, it comes out to be 3 million. But we know they had more, because it says in the Bible that they were multiplying at a fast rate. In Numbers, it says that there were myriads of thousands of people under Moses. Myriads of thousands. Myriads is 10,000. If it's 10 thousands of thousands, that's millions. So the Bible, they didn't have the word million. The word million is actually Revavot Alfei Yisrael. For those who know Hebrew or are listening to this tape, Revavot means myriads, Alfei means thousands. So it's thousands, myriads of thousands, which means there were at least 10 million people, Israelites, that were in the desert and received the 10 Commandments from Hashem. They also received the Bible after this whole scene of the 10 Commandments was over. What happened was Moses gave the Jewish people a book called the Book of the Covenant. They call this book the Book of the Covenant. The Book of the Covenant is called that because of the covenant that God made to Abraham. And this book includes Genesis and Exodus until the end of the 10 Commandments, and even one more chapter, which is a chapter that Moses tells the Jewish people the ordinances before he goes up Mount Sinai to get the tablets. So, in other words, until updated. He gave from the creation of the world, updated until he's going back up to the mountain. And when he goes back up to the mountain, it says here in Exodus 19, 23, Moses said to the Lord, people cannot come up Mount Sinai because you yourself warned us. Put limits around the mountain and set apart as holy. The Lord replied, go down and bring Aaron up with you. But the priests and the people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them. Wow. So Moses went down to the people and told them. He didn't want anybody coming up. It was just too powerful, too holy for anybody to come up to that mountain. And it's really a miracle that they found the mountain. The mountain is not in the Sinai Desert, what we call the Sinai Desert. It's in northern Saudi Arabia, and we have proof of it. And I can verify that. I definitely believe that is true. Mount Jabal al-Lawz, you can look it up online. You can see pictures. I also put a picture in my book. They found a cave there. There's a cave there that Moses went and he put his Torah. This is very important to know. When did Moses write the first Genesis? Genesis, we believe that these are called the 5 books of Moses. So the first book, Genesis, is also written by Moses. So when did Moses write Genesis? That's a very big question. When did he write Genesis? Nobody ever even asked that question except for me. Not that I ever saw it anyplace. So what I learned was that from Hashem, that when Moses saw God on the burning bush, God told him the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says there, I revealing myself to you in my name, not the way I revealed myself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he told him the whole story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Moses wrote it down, word for word. Moses was dictated. He was very professional because he was a prince, a pharaoh. He knew how to write. At that point, it was just chiseling, but he knew how to do it properly. And he chiseled out the words. And this book, Genesis, was hidden inside the cave. And when the Israelites came to Mount Sinai, Moses ran up. It says Moses ran up to Sinai. Why? I want to check my book because it's still there. I worked really hard on this book. You know, it's not like he's writing it on a computer. I want to check if nobody stole my book. So then he says he came down. And I put all these quotes in the book. It's really interesting. So these are the words of Genesis. They're a word from God. It's the way God is telling the story of Genesis. The story of Genesis says that that Abraham made a covenant with God. This covenant is called the covenant of the pieces. Hashem told Abraham to take about 3 animals, I think, and a bird. And you have to cut the animals in half, and the bird not cut in half. We cut it straight through, and a fire came down in between them. This is a sign from God that the nations of the world will not, who attack the little bird called Israel, will not be able to survive, but the little bird will survive. The fire that came down is symbolic, and that's why we have the fire on Mount Sinai. These fires is to remind the Jewish people that the reason he is saving you is because his covenant that he gave to Abraham. I loved Abraham, and Hashem says I loved Abraham, and in his merit, I'm going to save his children, and I'm going to bring them back to the land of Israel. The covenant is that the Jewish people are going to receive the land of Israel as a gift. There's something else I wanted to talk about, and this gift that we have of Eretz Yisrael is it's a really holy place. It's the holiest place in the world. It's not a very big place, very tiny, and everybody feels holiness. That's why everyone's fighting over it. Rashi, the commentator, one of the most famous commentators on the Bible, says that the reason why the whole Bible starts from Genesis is because Hashem wants to tell the world, I created the world, so I have a right to give out land. So let me tell you, I'm the creator of the world. The creator of the world in this instance, in the book of Genesis, of course God is the creator of earth. But when we're telling the story of Genesis, we're telling the story of the creation of this world. The world where Adam and Eve were born, where Adam speaks to God, where people have the ability to speak, to communicate, to think, to learn how to read eventually, learn how to write eventually, learn how to do computers. This is our world. This is the world that was created in Genesis. What God created millions of years ago is not the subject of Genesis. That's why scientists are having a problem. Religions are having a problem. It says the world was created in 6 days. It can't be 6 days. It can't be 6 years. It has to be millions of years. It could be, but it still was created by God. It could be it was millions of years. It wasn't the same people that were created. We're not descendants of the cavemen. We're not descendants of, actually, it could be descendants of the cavemen. We're definitely not descendants of monkeys or animals that looked like men. We are our own creation. God created a new creation, this creation that can speak. No monkeys can have the verbal abilities that a human can have, and the mind that a human can have. No matter how smart a monkey is, it's not even, they're not going to build a computer. Obviously, and they can't think and plan and think that they're thinking. Well, our mind is like fascinating. We really could be created in the image of God. You have any questions?
Questions for you?
Yeah.
I guess, can you elaborate when the next book is coming out? God Meets the World?
Oh, thank you. Yes. The next book is called God Meets the World. We are finishing it up maybe this week. And it takes probably another month until it actually goes into print, into publishing. This book, God Meets the World, is a lot what I talked about now today. The connection between the Abraham and the Ten Commandments. And then we are starting to explain every single commandment in a way that nobody ever understood it before. To connect the Ten Commandments to the Bible, to show how the Bible is actually a teacher's edition of the Ten Commandments, is explaining the Ten Commandments in depth. Very, very interesting. Even do not murder is a very short commandment, but really do not murder includes court systems that are done in the Bible. It includes not killing yourself. To kill a suicide is murder. We don't have permission. This body that we have, we don't have permission to destroy it. We can't, even eating unhealthy, if you don't have permission to eat unhealthy, it's murder. You can't, just like you can't really give your child unhealthy food because you didn't ask him permission. If he's willing to eat something that's not going to be healthy for him, he's not on the level that he can give permission. He's too young. Two children are too young. They can, what do they call it? In lawful, like, it's like it's not fair. Why you're giving them even chips, even just regular chips from the store. This stuff is cancerous. Why do you have permission to give it to your child unless you tell him, I have to warn you? Consent, informed consent. The children don't have informed consent to say if they want to. I'm sure they don't want. They don't want. Children want to live. They want to be healthy and strong and grow. If you're going to tell a child this doesn't make you strong, it doesn't make you grow, it doesn't build your muscles, they're gonna trash it. They're not going to want it. And we have to educate our children that we're going to eat healthy and be strong. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people that are healers end up getting messages from God. And a lot of people that get messages from God, like with me, end up being healers. Because if you don't start from not killing, so where are you going to start? So included in not killing is giving life. You're going to give life to people. You have to teach them to give life, to be healthy, to be strong, take care of your body, don't hate yourself. You can't love other people if you don't love yourself. If to love yourself, you have to treat yourself nicely. And then you're gonna be able to take care of somebody else, to love them, to care for them. One of the things was being a healer for so many years, I was doing reflexology every day. I started feeling jealous. It's like, I also want reflexology. It's not fair. So I got myself somebody who could do it. Actually, it was somebody who I taught her tricks. She went to a course herself, but I taught her some of my tricks. And then I got myself a good reflexology treatment once a week. Because you can't be on your own. We are like made to be dependent upon each other. This is one of the secrets of creation. We need to be dependent on each other. We need to love each other. We're built like that. It's part of our nourishment. And this is proven also in studies on the brain, that without social interaction, we can't flourish, we can't develop, children can't develop properly, people become mentally and emotionally very ill without friends. So the way to have friends is to first love ourselves. The way to love ourselves is to treat ourselves well. In this day and age, there is so much poison out there that's being offered for us for food that we have to be really, really careful not to hurt ourselves. I know it takes a lot of strength and perseverance. It also takes knowledge to know how to cook, how to prepare foods. I'm going to work on it in my future books. And Hashem just wants me to write these 4 books, teach the world how to, what God is, and after that he said, you're free. You can do all kinds of health books. I want to do all kinds of health books because when people are going to be healed, they're going to feel healthy, they're going to be able to get their brain thinking about what's true, looking for the truth. The brain is starting to work. You're not going to be hypnotized. I truly believe that one of the secrets of the Holocaust, one of the downfalls of why Holocaust happened, is because at that time, it was the beginning of white flour. That's before the Holocaust. People were eating whole wheat before the 40s only. And they started up a little bit in the rich people started up eating it. And then in about the 30s, they started eating, even the poor people had like once a week for a prize. They had a white bread, and it wasn't really white, But by the time the 1940s came around, people were it was already white flour as we know it, and we don't even know how much it was enriched at all in those days. The people were started, and they didn't have the fruits and vegetables that we have now because they didn't know about nutrition. People were living on white flour, white semolina, white corn grits, white potatoes, sacks of white flour. That's about it. They didn't have much. I mean, they had a little bit. In Europe, might have some carrots, some beets, some cabbage occasionally, so they survived because they had some vegetables and some chicken. But the main staple was white flour, so their brains started to deteriorate. And the way we see the brains deteriorating is by the hypnotism that went on. They're totally hypnotized by this demagogue, Hitler, and he was surprised. He wasn't expecting the whole world to be hypnotized. Are you kidding? All he wanted to do is get the Jews out because the Jews were so smart. They were taking over the banks. They were taking over leadership. And he said, okay, let's get rid of the Jews. Let's send them to Poland. Let's send them to Holland. Nobody wanted them. They didn't accept them. America didn't accept them. So he said, oh, this is great. Let's see how far this is going to go. Let's put them in ghettos. Start persecuting them. See how, if the world is going to object. Nobody objected. Because in the heart of hearts, there's a tremendous anti-Semitism. And it was going for years and years and centuries, but it just wasn't documented. Because it wasn't documented, we don't know about it. So we're screaming about the Holocaust, the last 4 years of this horrible anti-Semitism. But before that, also, hundreds of thousands of people were killed in pogroms, and their houses were burned. The Jews had to move from city to city. This did not happen in the Far East. The Far East has no problem with Jews, because the Far East weren't Christians. So they didn't have anything against the Jewish religion. They loved the Jews. They accepted the Jews. Even to this day, in China, they have a book that's a requirement in college to learn about how the Jews changed the world and helped the world. I think one of the reasons why the Jews changed the world and helped the world is because being descendants of Abraham. Abraham was very smart, extremely smart. He was so smart that he figured out that there's one God in a world full of idol worship. He figured it out. This like he was thinking and trying to figure out what's going on. So he was able to rise above the hypnotism of idol worship and figure out that there's a God. This is like genius. We don't realize it, but it's genius at least on the level of creating the first wheel. At least on that level. I mean, it's very hard to understand that if there's no mention of God at all, it's gods are idols or gods are stars or suns. He said, "Nuh-uh, something's wrong here. This doesn't jive. It doesn't make sense." And God saw this, and He loved Abraham very much, and He blessed the nation of Israel, and the nation of Israel has to go for that blessing and tell the world, give the world the message of the Ten Commandments, give the world the message of the Bible, of the Torah, and not hibernate. The Jewish people are hibernating now to their own ghettos. They're so persecuted so much. The book tells a whole story of the Holocaust, or this book, Who is God? That's why I talked about it now, because it's in my book. I'm not afraid of to do the subject, because I want to expose. One of the reasons I'm writing is because I want people to be not afraid to say what their questions are. I want to, just say it as it is. It's like, I know you're hiding in your heart something, so let's ask the questions. So we're going to ask all kinds of questions that people can ask, and God willing, there'll be more and more. And I hope you get my book and you follow up on my website, which is called Batya Teaches God. And we're going to do all kinds of stuff, God willing. And I hope you can watch me in the next video. We're gonna call the video God Meets the World because that's the name that sticks. That was Hashem's name to begin with. So see you soon. Bye bye.